Alright, 8th graders, today we're talking about solving quadratic equations using square roots. So it's just another way to find zeros. You may want to jot that down. We're just finding zeros. The ways that we have found zeros already are by factoring and graphing. Sometimes just doing the square root lends itself more easily to finding the zeros. So, you can solve x squared equals d by taking the square root of each side. When d is greater than 0, x squared equals d has two solutions. If d is greater than 0, if d equals 0, your equation has one solution, and when d is less than 0, has no solutions, doesn't cross the x-axis, it's not factorable. So if d is less than 0, we like those problems because there's nothing for us to do. Alright, so on to this first one. We have 3x squared minus 27 equals 0. To solve using square roots, we want to get rid of everything that we can. So we have 3x squared equals 27. And then we can divide by 3. So x squared equals 9. Now, that means we have two solutions up here. So the opposite of squared is square root. That's how we get rid of it. We do it on both sides. So x equals 3 and negative 3. Those are my two solutions. So if I were to have to graph this, I know that it opens up because I have a positive 3. I know that my zeros are at 3 and negative 3. So my parabola looks something like that. We could make a XY chart and do a really great job on it, but it's not required for this. So the next one, if we add 10 to both sides, we get x squared equals 0. And this is showing us that there's one solution. That one solution is 0. And so in this case, our parabola opens up because we have a positive x squared term, and it just touches right there at 0, 0, the origin. The next one, 5x squared plus 11 equals 16, so we would subtract 11. Negative 5x squared equals 5. Divide by negative 5. X squared equals negative 1. So we square root that, and there's nothing that multiplies by itself to make a negative, so there's no solution. If you graph this one on your calculator, you first would have to subtract 16 and graph negative 5x squared minus 5, y equals, but you'll see that that never crosses the x-axis. I think it's a parabola down in the fourth quadrant. And then the next one, we can divide by -3. I get x squared equals 25. So when I square root that, I get 5 and -5 for my two zeros. The next section can also be solved using zeros. So we have x minus 1 squared, that's the whole thing squared. So I square root now to get rid of that. So I have x minus 1 equals, now the square root of 25 is 5 or -5. So I'm going to write x minus 1 equals 5 or x minus 1 equals -5. Those are my two solutions. If you don't write both of those out, you're likely going to get these problems wrong, because when I add 1, I get x equals 6. When I add 1 here, I get x equals -4. So you have to write out both things. You can't just get 6 and then write -6 because you think they're going to be the same. Whenever you have the equation with the two separate options, you have to write them both out. On this one, we have to divide by 4 before we can square root, because that 4 has nothing to do with this square root. So the opposite of squared is the square root. I get x minus 3 equals, the square root of 9 is 3, the square root of 4 is 2, or x minus 3 equals -3/2. So you're going to add 3 on both of these. On this first one, 1.5 plus 3 is 4.5. On the second one, -1.5 plus 3 is 1.5. So those are my two solutions for that one. When you turn the page, you can see we're going to start with a word problem. A touch tank has a height of 3 feet. Its length is 3 times its width. The volume of the tank is 270 cubic feet. Find the length and width of the tank. So on this one, length times width times height equals volume. A touch tank has a height of 3. The volume is 270. The length is 3 times the width. So we don't know the width, but we know the length is 3w. So if we multiply all of this together, 3w times w is 3w squared, 3w squared times 3 is 9w squared. I divide by 9, so w squared equals 30. I square root both sides, and on this one, we can either simplify, so I can take nothing out of 30, so I can leave it square root of 30, or change it to a decimal if you want to, and this is feet. Alright, so then there are some practice problems where you have to solve the equation using square roots. So again, you're just gonna add 64, x squared equals 64. When I square root that, I get x equals 8 or -8. On number 3, we would add 11. X squared equals 0. When I square root both sides, I just get x equals 0. And then on number 5, I would subtract 12. So 2x squared equals negative 3 divided by 2. X squared equals negative 1.5. When I square root that, I can't square root a negative, so there's no solution. It's not factorable, it does not cross the x-axis. Try the 2, 4, and 6 for homework. And then on this bottom section, we square root at this part, and we say x minus 4 equals 7, or x minus 4 equals negative 7. So then when we add 4 here, we get x equals 11, but when we add 4 here, we get x equals negative 3 for our 2 solutions. Try number 8, you have to divide by 16 first, and then square root. When you divide by 16, I would leave it like that, because those are both perfect squares. And then try number 9 as well. We'll go over those tomorrow in class. Have a great night.